Tulsi, I'm interested in hearing your point of view as a Democrat. How did Democrats and somebody who just has a hard time voting for Donald Trump, how do you think they approached this, and what do you think they came away with?
I think that anyone who watched with an open mind, sincerely interested in listening to what both JD Vance and Tim Walz had to say, probably came away with a very different and positive impression of JD Vance, as well as the policies that he and President Trump are putting forward, perhaps than they had before, because a lot of people are getting their information from the mainstream propaganda media outlets who are very, very clearly in the pocket of the Kamala Harris, Tim Walz campaign, just as we saw with these moderators here tonight. I think JD did a fantastic job in talking about these issues in a way that I could relate to, that were very real and really reflect the fact that both he and President Trump are listening to the American people. You contrast that with what we hear from Kamala Harris, what we heard from Tim Walz, who had a really, really tough job tonight trying to defend Kamala Harris and Joe Biden's disastrous policies. But what we've heard from Kamala Harris and Joe Biden over the last 4 years is how great Bidenomics is, how when you look at the data, the economy is better. And they're so arrogantly dismissive of the reality of the struggles of so many Americans across the country who are dealing with the higher cost of prices in almost every aspect of the basic necessities of life. So I think that JD did a great job in communicating tonight, just as he has been, as he's done over 100 interviews in this campaign alone. We saw Tim Walz, who I think he's done virtually one interview, a puff piece with CNN, and Kamala Harris by his side. And I think he had a tough job, again, of trying to defend Kamala Harris's record and did not meet the mark of even trying to make their case to the American people in a very compelling and clear way.
What was the moment tonight that you would walk away and say that was an important moment? That was the line or the moment that will crystallize things one way or the other?
I honestly think there were a lot of those moments on every one of the major issues. One that I will point out that I think is really important really came at the very end of the debate, that I wish the moderators, had they been fair and neutral, that they would have focused on, because it is a very serious issue that we're facing, which is censorship under Kamala Harris that we've seen over the last 4 years. We have hard evidence that this has been taking place. And you have Tim Walz himself, who has said that free speech and the First Amendment is a privilege, and that it does not apply to misinformation and disinformation and hate speech. And the thing that he and Kamala Harris are not telling the American people is that they believe they're the only ones who get to decide what is misinformation and disinformation. If I had been a moderator at that debate, I would have asked about, well, okay, so you want to see certain hate speech banned because you find it offensive and hurtful and harmful. Well, would you then support banning then Hillary Clinton's hateful, offensive speech and labeling me a traitor to the country that I love and I'm willing to lay my life down for? That was deeply offensive, and it was also 100% false. So their double standard is very real. They want to protect speech that they like. They want to ban speech that they don't like. And JD was on point when he said, fundamentally, we cannot have a democratic republic unless we protect every American's right to free speech and encourage this vibrant marketplace of ideas where we can debate issues that are important to us, where more speech always wins and the best ideas will rise to the top.
I will tell you that the freedom of speech thing and misinformation, disinformation is fascinating to me, mainly because of the amount of obvious lies that are told, and from a governmental level. But tonight, the Tiananmen Square answer was breathtakingly bad, but I'm not sure that makes a difference in America anymore, does it?
I don't know. I think that Tim Walz and his team will sell it as, well, he stumbled or this or that, or he misspoke, which is what he's trying to say.
He's a knucklehead.
But yeah, which to me is just disingenuous. If you make a mistake, own it. Take responsibility for it. I think that's what we all want from our leaders. When you screw up, take ownership, be accountable, and talk about how you will be better. The fact that this free speech issue is not being taken seriously. Sorry, I'm going to keep harping on this because of what's happened just this week. You know, people like me and Bobby Kennedy and others who've directly seen political retaliation because of our exercising of free speech. Obviously, this is personal and important to all of us. And we know that this election is about our right to free speech, among many other issues. But to see John Kerry sitting on that panel in the World Economic Forum saying that the First Amendment is the greatest obstacle to quote unquote effective governance. And he said this election in the United States of America is about free speech, and therefore it's important that they win and win big so that they can remove this obstacle and get back to consensus building and governance. Free speech is getting in the way of that. So even John Kerry is saying this election is about free speech. And just like the choice in this election is between the warmongers of Kamala Harris and Dick Cheney and the anti-warmongers of Donald Trump, Tulsi Gabbard, and Bobby Kennedy, this election too is about free speech in those of us who believe strongly in it, even for those that we disagree with, and Kamala Harris and Tim Walz who are against free speech. These are things that all Americans should stand together on and recognize there is only one choice in this election, and that's to vote for Donald Trump.
So when you look at the free speech issue, it goes beyond just saying you can't say that. It is the total weaponization of this government, as you have experienced. Any updates on that with you?
You know, the federal air marshal whistleblowers came forward and exposed the truth and provided evidence about how one day after I criticized Kamala Harris on a televised national interview, talking about how dangerous the consequences would be if she were to serve as president and commander-in-chief, the very next day I was placed on a domestic terror watch list called Quiet Skies that almost nobody, including members of Congress, know much about. Given no reason why I was put on the list, there's no due process to say, hey, show me what you got and take me off the list. As far as I know, the last time I asked, I heard that the targeting package that the TSA built against me is still operational. I hope that Congress takes this up. I'm pursuing legal action, working with Jay Sekulow and the ACLJ, because I'm not the only one who is being impacted by this. There are many Americans whose names will never make headlines who have also been wrongly targeted by this administration, specifically because of their political views and their exercise of their right to free speech.
Tulsi, as always, thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for being you. Thank you for being as brave as you are. I, for one, really appreciate you and Bobby Kennedy for everything that you guys are doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Glenn.